Let's check with Dan on the roof right after this.
No, right. Desperately Seeking Susan, late night tonight.
It's an interesting phenomenon, the Iron John phenomenon. Robert Bly has written a best-selling book on the subject, and across the country, Wildman Weekends are taking place. One took place in Austin, Texas not so long ago, and 2 Cleveland men were there. What they did there was profiled on 2020 not so long ago, and with us this morning are Bill Cogan, who's a counselor, and he's involved in the Wildman Weekend program. And Mike Conway is here this morning. He's a Clevelander as well, who was participating in the one in Austin. Nice to have both of you here this morning. I guess the first question is, for those of you who might not have heard about the movement, what is a Wildman Weekend?
Well, the Wildman Weekend was something thrown by the Austin Men's Center in Texas, and it was a gathering of men, really. The Wildman is the name that attracts men to it, and I think to sort of stir up their passion. I think a lot of men have stopped living through their passion in their lives, and so this Wildman Weekend is a connection, and it's really brought on by Robert Bly and a mythopoetic movement that's part of the men's movement.
Do you think it's a response to the women's movement? Women are getting together and talking about ultimate womanly things, and it seems like men didn't have any similar kind of a mode of expression.
Right. I do believe that it came from that same kind of movement where it was an example, almost a model of what now men could do that women were talking for so long together, and they got together and said, we need to get together and decide what's happening to us as a culture and as a culture of women. And for us, I think that was an example now that men could do that.
What motivated the two of you to attend such a Wildman Weekend? What was appealing to you that you thought that you would get something out of it?
Well, I went there after reading Iron John, and what Robert Bly spoke to me about was not about being the wild man, but about getting in touch with wild man energy inside myself. And it's about the passion, like Bill talked about, the passion that was buried deep within me. And getting with a group of men, 100 men, brought about an opportunity, a space for me to release a lot of emotions that I had been having pent up.
Are we see these men, and they're feeling things. I mean, they're really letting things out that have probably been in there. Look, he's alone in the field, and he's probably accessed something that has been in his heart and deep down in his soul for maybe most of his life.
Right. I think that's a real significant part, is that these men are getting together to say, I've had these feelings caged up in myself for a long time, and I haven't known what to do with them. Mm-hmm. And it's been a frustration, and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, in a negative way in our culture.
Is there some kind of something that happens there that pushes the button, that pulls the trigger, that lets this out? I mean, how do they precipitate it?
Well, I think a lot of men have either read the book or they're into some kind of recovery for themselves. A lot of addictions recovery people seem to know about this movement. And then just men who are searching themselves, and they're stuck at home, or they're continue to look at their lives and say that, I keep trying to go up this ladder of success, and somewhere it stops. Somewhere they realize that inside of myself I can't relate to my children and my wife, and I only feel good about myself at work, and then that stops. They can't seem to go up any further, or they come crashing down.
During the weekend, do you come to a conclusion that this all originated from your fathers maybe, or from your childhood, or is it something that's innate in every man that everyone needs to bring it to the surface? Or is it just particular men, maybe the way they were raised, that causes you to hold back your emotions? Or is it just a male thing?
I think depending on the family, there's different issues. One of the things they did was identify the type of father we had. Was it a passive father, an abusive father, or just an absent father? And so getting in touch with your father and getting in touch with yourself and seeing how there wasn't a bond that took place, So what some of the people in the movement talk about is, since the Industrial Revolution, fathers haven't been present to their children, and the loss is especially great with sons.
Yeah, I guess sons don't. I mean, little girls in the traditional American family grow up watching mom do what mom does in the house. Sweeping and all those housewifely things.
Wait a minute.
On the other hand, Dad goes up, he takes his lunch bucket and he goes to the mine or the mill, or he puts on his pinstripe suit and goes to the law office, and the kid doesn't have any idea what it is that he's doing out there, and has no real sense of the connection between his father trudging off every morning and trudging back at night, and their well-being, their livelihood. And in fact, Robert Bly might say that that it's a negative transaction all the way around.
Well, it is. I think what happens is that the father goes out, and the first time, from the other cultures and the tribal cultures, they used to go together to hunt, or they used to go together to gather things.
Rites of passage.
Right. So the men would go out now. Now they're working in a factory, and of course the environment is horrible, and they compete against each other for the first time, men against each other. I'm going to do a better job. I've got to be on top. So now men aren't together, men are against each other. And what happened is the man comes home from work, and all the little boy feels is his father's temperament, his frustration and his anger. And
his father's exhausted, I'm sure, by the end of the long day, competing out there with other men. They come home, and the last thing they want to deal with is emotions.
Exactly. And so there's been a lot of absent father. And then after a while, as that went on, I think men didn't know how to be men at all. And so the only thing they could relate to was being a success. You know, and so that's where the term comes, a success object. Women were a sex object. Men are success objects.
When we come back, I want to ask you what this did for you guys. I mean, how different are you today than you were at the beginning of this year when you were just reading Bly and thinking about, maybe I'll do this? And we'll also invite you to participate here as well. 578-1000 is our number. Bill Cogan is with us this morning, and Mike Conway.
Yes. I was curious, how might women detect these symptoms in men, that their man is suppressing their emotions and trying to put forth that masculine sense as opposed to being a little bit more expressive with their feelings?
Well, I think that women know this and have known this for a long time, and it's probably something they could tell me more about. But I think one of the things that me and Mike talked about on the way down was seeing a man's back walk away is one real good example. I think the signs of frustration, depression, coming home from work, just lying in front of the TV, alcoholism, gambling, getting involved in their world outside of the home and not being really connected into the relationship, not expressing themselves or saying, you know, usually the question, how was your day at work? It's not talking about it.
Do you have advice? How would you like the girlfriend or the wife to react to you? If you had your druthers, how would you want them to open up to you?
Well, I think that's a sticky question.
Is it a sticky question?
I think it just gets controlling, and in the way that men have to sort of sort some of this out for themselves, and that it's not really an issue of how a woman could go in and grab hold. And I think that's what's been happening for a long time, is that women have felt responsible to go into their husbands and drag out their emotions. And I think that that's, one is a sense of frustration, and it's also something impossible to do. And that's what's been happening for a long time, is as the woman pursues, the man says, get back.
Mm-hmm. What was it that you came away from that Austin event with, Mike, in your case? I mean, how are you changed?
I don't know that I've changed that much. What I know that I got in touch with was a sense of grief. You know, there was like a grief door that I opened up, and some of the grief of, you know, the wound that I had received. I received a wound because living in an age after the Industrial Revolution, my father was a corporate lawyer. I didn't go to work with my father. I wasn't with him on a constant basis. And the way I reacted to that was I wounded my father by, you know, in the late 60s, I grew my hair long, I got into drugs and alcohol, and I didn't want anything to do with his world. And for most of my life, I've run from that wound with drugs, alcohol, relationship after relationship. And what the weekend gave me was permission to feel my grief on a very deep level, and to cry in the presence of men, and to not be ashamed of that or embarrassed by that.
Was it cathartic? I mean,
yes, it was.
Are you, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but are you more at peace with what you perceive now as the tragedy of youth?
Well, getting at peace is a process, and I've begun the process, and I'm more at peace with myself. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm comfortable and totally at peace with myself, but I've begun a process of feeling comfortable with myself and my emotions. That's a part of myself that's been split off.
Well, Bill, you were a counselor on this event, facilitator. but clearly there must have been something that motivated you to go, and I wonder what this event did for you, and what being involved in this movement has done for you.
Well, actually, I wasn't a facilitator there. I went for myself, and although I am a counselor, I went out of some of my own interests. I had sort of a double thing going on for me, but it motivated me because I had similar issues, loss of my father, as far as actually he died when I was 18, as well as just his own way of acting out and his alcoholism. So he wasn't really present, and I saw his struggle. And I know that he had a very difficult time in the work world as a salesman. There's such high pressure to perform, high pressure to sell, beat the other guy out, and at the same time, I think men really want to connect to each other. So how do you try to reach out to another man and at the same time want to get the job from him? I think that's a real dilemma for men in general. And it's our stereotypes. I think taught as little boys, we're taught to be strong, to not feel, don't hurt.
Have you made a conscious change in your life to be more open with other men that haven't experienced the Wildman Weekend? You know, somebody in Cleveland who hasn't ever even heard of it. Do you find yourself opening up to them necessarily?
I do try to. You know, I think that men that have no idea about their feelings at all won't come close to the topic. But there are a bunch of men who are doing this, so there is a sense of connection here. There is men committed to trying to find out who they are and where they're going and how they can contribute to the community in a much healthier way.
Do you feel like that you're in better shape? You're a counselor. You work with you work with people who have all kinds of addiction problems, right? And this was, in a sense, then, an effort to counsel yourself in a way.
Oh, sure.
Understand yourself a little better.
Sure.
Self-discovery.
Yeah, right. It is, and I believe if you go to a counselor or you are a counselor, that you continually need to work on yourself. You continually need to look at your own issues. Otherwise, you get stuck, and I don't think you can help somebody or bring somebody to a place where you haven't been.
Why don't we take a call? Good morning. Do you have a question, please?
Yes. I was wondering if the weekend you attended was an open and positive experience for all the men present, or were there men there who found that they still couldn't open up and let go? And how often are these weekends held?
Well, for me, it was a very open experience, and I didn't talk to every man to know what they experienced.
But over
but
100, right?
Right. And the majority of the men, though, that I connected with were very moved. In one way or another, it was a new experience for them, and I got mostly positive feedback. Now, I didn't run the session, so I'm not sure, but they're being held all over the country at different times. And there is a committee going on here. I think Mike could more address that there's a committee here trying to get a weekend going right in Cleveland.
Do one here, in this region.
Right, we're trying to get an area that's remote, maybe in the National Park or out in Painesville, one of the Boy Scout camps. We're in that process. There's a group of men that are trying to get, we're not calling it a Wildman Weekend, we haven't even come up with a name, but it's a process that we're trying to start where men can get together in a natural setting, and you know, where we'll have workshops and talking about men's issues, fathering, grieving, rites of passage.
We have a phone number that's on the screen just now, 321-7857. You can call for further information. And I also have you're with St. Luke's in Solon. Is there a number as well that one might call for further information? You could talk to somebody who might want to know more?
Sure. We're going to be doing therapy groups to be able to deal with the same issues that were at the men's, but in a psychotherapy way. So we'll be in a group session talking about that. So for St. Luke's, the number's up on the screen now, 248-3032. And we can deal with some things. Now, the weekend is mostly a lot of activities and a lot of things, but it's not necessarily psychotherapy, dealing with some of the deeper issues that I think men need to come into a circle of men and talk with each other about.
Is there a charge for this, for the weekend, that men?
There is. It hasn't been set yet. I don't exactly know what it is. Yeah.
Right. Pretty nominal.
Yeah, pretty nominal. It's good to have you both here this morning. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And it's got a lot of people talking. The 2020 program just lately, which showed what you all were doing in Texas, and of course Iron John, which is still high on the bestseller list. It's obviously an idea whose time has come.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here today. And we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, Carol Montgomery will join us up here.
Elvis Costello with a brand new look and a brand new